Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin,
and we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we are super exhausted, but we're still here talking about Dungeons & Dragons, playing some more games, having so much fun.
It's just so fun to be here, and I just really need a nap, and people need to stop coming over to my house.
Welcome to our channel where we cover advice for very tired and overworked Dungeon Masters and the players that they have to run games for all the time.
We post new videos when we can, and we do our best to continue making content.
So what are we doing? Dealing with DM burnout. This week we are talking about a very important topic for Dungeon Masters, which is the reality that every DM encounters is feeling burnt out of running your game. It happens to all of us, whether we are experienced Dungeon Masters who've been running the game for 20 years, or a new Dungeon Master who is starting to feel overwhelmed after running lots of Minds of Phandelver and gearing up for their first campaign.
DMs deal with a lot when it comes to running a game of D&D. You are both the referee. You need to have all of the rules in your head at all times, but you're also an improv artist, a storyteller, and you're trying to keep track of the fun level at the table and making sure that all of the players are getting equal spotlight, having a good time. Perhaps you're even hosting at your house. You need to make sure that your game room is prepped, that the right minis and the maps are all set up for you, that you have enough snacks, food for your guests, and that you have to clean up afterwards. At the end of the day, it can be a lot to deal with.
And it doesn't end there. Maybe you've got players with scheduling conflicts or interpersonal problems with another, and so now you're having to be the referee not only around the rules, but between the interpersonal lives of your player characters. Maybe you are trying to run more than one campaign, and it's been forever since you got the chance to play a character yourself. There's a lot of things that can contribute to feeling like you are just burnt out as a Dungeon Master. And so today we're going to talk about just a few strategies for confronting that, dealing with it. Hopefully these work for you. Sometimes they work for us. Sometimes they don't. But hopefully they give you a few tools to overcome it.
There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling.
If you as a Dungeon Master aren't having a good time, if you aren't looking forward to the game session, or worse, you are starting to dread D&D night, if it's starting to feel like a job, if you're coming away from the game sessions feeling frustrated, upset, or exhausted, that is a sign that you might be feeling burnt out. This game is supposed to be fun and rewarding for you as the Dungeon Master as much as it is for the players. And if it's starting to feel like a chore, that's a sign that you're burnt out.
We all need to keep in mind that Dungeons & Dragons is a game. Above everything else, yes, it's probably the greatest game in the whole world. That's up for debate, but in my opinion it is. But it is still a game, and games are there for our amusement and enjoyment. D&D is a very special game because we get to sit around with our friends and collaborate in a cooperative environment. The DM gets to be part of that with their storytelling, and you get to take the seat as the DM of being the storyteller, bringing your tales and adventures to life, and watching how the players around your table are going to interact with it. As soon as you are feeling like this isn't fun, then it's no longer a game. It's now work, effort, stress, anxiety, and you don't want to walk away from a D&D night feeling tired. For some of us, it takes a little bit to get there. The learning curve of being a DM can be tiring, and the first few game sessions, you're probably going to be stressed because you are sitting in the hot seat, and it's kind of daunting to be a DM for the first time. I've been there, Monty's been there. It can be a lot, but eventually you want to start getting to the point where every game night is just exciting fun for you and your friends. So what do you do if you're starting to feel burnt out?
So we've got 5 things that you can try. There's no specific order that you can try these in. You might try 1 or 2 of these things. You might try all of them. It's really up to you to figure out what's going to work best for you, and you might have to try them to find the right solution first. Sometimes these things have worked for us, sometimes they haven't. But overall, these are the 5 things that I've tried that have worked for me in the past when I felt burnt out. And the first thing that I like to consider is resetting expectations. We start many campaigns with session 0 to set expectations. But at any time, if you want to with your players, we can reset that and have a session re-0 where we talk about what everyone's getting out of the game, what everyone wants of the game, and particularly what the balance is between your players contributing to the game experience and what you are bringing to the table. Because I do feel that one of the contributors for Burnout is when Dungeon Masters feel that they have to be bringing more and more and prepping more and more and more to live up to the high expectations of your players, which, especially in a world now where people are streaming games, where we have the influence of things like Critical Role and streaming shows and Kickstarter campaigns, it can feel like, as a Dungeon Master, you're supposed to be a professional entertainer. But unless you are getting paid to do so, DMing should not feel like work.
And I have found in my experience with my group at my table that there is a lot of forgiveness. You don't need to be the greatest storyteller. I forget bits of my story all the time. I forget rules all the time. And nobody is going to be knocking on my door to break my legs for forgetting the rules. I hope not. My players are pretty forgiving. I've even let some things slide, and I've said out loud to my players, hey, I'm letting this go this time, but I don't know if I'm going to let it go in the future. And they've been cool with that. Be forthcoming with your information. Be honest with your players. And if you are starting to feel burnt out, ask them to regroup and reset expectations. Now, you want to hear what your players are getting out of the game and what their expectations are, but you should also take the session re-0 as an opportunity to set your own expectations and what you need out of the game. That might involve something as simple as, I could really use help at the end of the game with cleaning up. You might also find that the players are driving the story in a completely random direction and it's getting off the rails. Not that every game needs to be on a rails, but if your goal is to slay the vampire in the creepy castle on the cliff and your players have started to investigate a completely different thing and you've been too uncomfortable to say, no, you can't do this, I need you to steer back, a session re-0 is a great time to reiterate what the point of the campaign you're trying to run is, where the story is supposed to be going, and how everybody feels about just adjusting to get back in the direction you were hoping to push for your story.
This also might be an opportunity to address any interpersonal issues that are happening at your table. Like, for example, if your players are always second-guessing your rulings, or arguing about the rules, or having disagreements, or having lengthy conversations where they're arguing for hours and hours and hours about what the next thing is they're going to do, and that's making you exhausted. This can be an opportunity to put those things on the table, discuss them, and find alternate ways of curbing those things so that they don't burn you out. This could also be one of the things where you maybe have to look at yourself and how much work you are putting on yourself. I've talked with Dungeon Masters who have started off their D&D campaigns by building immaculate terrain of Cragmaw Cave. And it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. They painted it. They 3D printed all these miniatures. Every week they're drawing artwork, creating all this extra media, bringing props, lighting candles, making food, turning the entire D&D game into a massive performance for their group. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to do all that to have an amazing time playing D&D. I love miniatures, I love terrain, I love all the gubbins, but if you're spending more time getting all that ready for your game than playing the game itself, maybe you've got to gauge exactly what is a productive use of your time and what's not. If you love making terrain, if you love painting miniatures, and if doing those things in preparation for your game is the way you like to cool down after work at the end of the day, do it. Keep doing it. Don't stop. But if you're only doing those things because you've created this, because you feel like now your players have an expectation of all the bells and whistles, dial it back a little bit. Be fair to yourself. I am very certain that Matt Mercer does not paint all of those miniatures that he uses on Critical Role. And you don't have to have fully painted miniatures at your game table either.
You don't even need to have the right miniatures. Yeah. My players have made fun of me so many times when I put a mini on the table and apologize to them because I'm like, this mini is the dragon tonight. And they look at me and very jokingly say, oh no, do we have to use our imaginations? And yeah, it's a bit of a joke at my table because I always feel like I owe them the proper mini, but I don't. We're using our imaginations, and a lot of fun can be had just up here. And you don't need to hold yourself to those same high standards. Even if one game night you do hit those high standards, and the next one you're playing on a drawn map that you drew on a piece of paper with no miniatures because you don't have the right stuff for it, it's okay. Everybody's still going to have a good time. And if these things are fun for you, always do what's going to be fun for you. But if you're feeling burnt out, don't worry too much. Probably the biggest lesson that I've learned as a DM in all my years of DMing is to do less. Now, it's taken me years to get to the point where I can do little enough that I only prep a few hours before my game session. During the week leading up, I might write down the connective tissue. How does the adventure I'm about to run connect to the larger story I'm telling? I might map that out ahead of time. But then when it comes to game night, I write something like, there's bullywugs, they're in the swamp, they have some issues with their king, and my players have to figure it out. And then they go, and then I improv a lot of it. And improv is a very useful skill that you will learn over time. As you develop these skills, you have to prepare less. And as you prepare less, you're going to have less of a chance of burnout.
And of course, preparation should be fun. And this is the matter that for me is very important. I love preparing for my game. I have fun making maps. I have fun creating NPCs. I have fun writing lore. And the experience of preparing for your game should be entertaining for you as a game master. If it's not, or if some types of preparation are more fun that are for you than others, do the preparation that is entertaining for you and reset expectations with your players about the types of prep that are not. Hand in hand with this, there's a lot of other administration that happens for running a game of D&D that don't involve you preparing the adventure. All these administrative tasks do not have to fall on your shoulders alone. And this is our next tip, which is sharing responsibilities. If you are the host for your game and you are responsible for cleaning up your kitchen table, packing up at the end of the night, scheduling the next game, wrangling everyone to show up on the schedule, that's a lot of extra work that is on your table that maybe it's worthwhile getting some help there.
I think that divvying up tasks is a really great tool. The players at the table are all coming to play the game, and asking them to share a little bit of the responsibility outside of prepping the game that they can take on. Maybe one person can be in charge of ordering the food for the evening. One person is in charge of bringing snacks. One person is in charge of scheduling. Yeah, it might be happening at your house, but for my game, I know that Sundays are when I like to play D&D. So having somebody else message in our group chat saying, hey, does Sunday the whatever work for everybody, and have them kind of organize. And me, as the DM, can pop in and say, yeah, I'm good any Sunday. I've cleared those days for D&D, so you guys figure out when the next Sunday is that you're available. Or even asking your players at the end of the game night, hey, can you guys help me clean up? Just put the terrain in this bin, put the dishes in the kitchen, whatever you need to do. Just a few extra hands to help out with these tasks to make your life a little bit easier.
Cleaning up together after the game session, if you are playing in person, is a great way to just hang out and be a little bit more social with one another. It's a super helpful gesture that any player can do for their host/dungeon master. And I would say that even if your dungeon master isn't the host of the game, whoever is hosting the game, players, you should stick around for the extra 5 to 10 minutes that helps to take out all the trash of all the leftover snacks, put away all the miniatures and terrain, pick up all the dice, and reset the place back to a stable state. It's common courtesy, and it can actually go a really long way to preventing burnout.
I also divvy up tasks within the game itself. There is one player at my table who loves taking notes And so they are the official recapper every session. Every session I hand it over to them to say, what happened last session? And they do a great recap that often even helps me as a DM remember some of the bits that I forgot. I'll take my own notes as well, but just having somebody else at the table to deliver that to the players to get the game started is great. Oftentimes in my game sessions when we need to change scenes, we'll take a quick 10-15 minute break. People will use the washroom. Usually one player will stay by the table to help me set up the next terrain piece. They don't know quite what they're setting up, but they'll still ask questions, and I'll be like, yep, set these pieces up over there, put these somewhere. And just having those extra hands and extra bits just really makes the game flow a lot easier.
And I would say as a final responsibility that the players should share, players, you can save your dungeon master from burning out, is players share the responsibility of showing appreciation to your dungeon master and thanking them for running a great game and telling them how much fun they had. Sometimes just hearing from your players that they had a good time is all it takes to prevent the burnout. Feeling like you as a dungeon master are appreciated for the extra little work that you do in making the game happen can really be the magic behind preventing the burnout. So as a player, make sure that you share the responsibility to show your appreciation and also to take your responsibility as a player for contributing to the game by being proactive, by jumping on those adventure hooks, by being a cooperative player, by role-playing your character, by being invested in the story. All of these things are things that players can do to support dungeon masters because that are the things that make dungeon masters feel rewarded for what they bring to the game experience.
Now, if these options so far have not worked for you, it might be time to actually take a break. And that's our third tip, is to actually take a break. Take a couple weeks off, upwards of a month off if you need to. Sometimes it can be the hardest thing. We all, as dungeon masters, have had scheduling issues with our party not being able to make a game or two. Sometimes I'm relieved when we take a week off, but I've found it exceptionally hard as the DM to be the person who says, hey, I need this week off. And I actually did it recently once, and one of my players said, thanks for letting us know. We were knee-deep in book writing, and my players were like, hey, are we playing this Sunday? And every one of my players was like, yep, I'm good. And there was me sitting there as the DM being like, oh yeah, if everybody can play, then we should play. I was burnt out. I did not have any motivation. I hadn't prepped a thing. And a few days before, I knew that I wasn't able to prep. I knew that I was burnt out. And I messaged the group and I said, hey guys, I don't actually think I can run a game this week. I'm really sorry. I need this week and next week off to finish some things that I have to do. And then we can get back to it. And it was really helpful that one of my players messaged me and said, thanks so much for letting us know. We're ready to play whenever you are. And that break really, really helped. It allowed me to not have to stress about prepping the next session, making sure my table was set up, thinking about food or anything like that. All I had to worry about were the other tasks in my life that I had to take care of. Because we all have lives. We all need to protect our mental health. And sometimes just taking a few weeks off is the most important thing that you can do for yourself.
I also think that if you do have a group that does play very regularly, being realistic with yourselves about, maybe around the holidays or sometime during the summer, planning to take a couple weeks off the campaign. I know the fear is always there that if you take a break, the game's just going to fall apart. And that does happen, and that is the risk of taking the break. But there are a couple sub-alternatives to just not playing at all that you can do that represent taking a break of a different magnitude. Beyond just taking a week off, taking a month off, whatever, you could, if you are running a homebrew campaign, try running a module instead. And that particularly can be helpful if you are going into a busy period in your own life, but you still want to continue playing D&D. Because running a module, especially some of the better written ones, can really just offload a lot of that responsibility for preparing the game. And now you can just run it right out of the book and still have everything going on without interruption.
What's great about running a module is a lot of people put the module in a box that if you're running it, you have to run it exactly as depicted in the book, and it leaves less room for creativity. And I'm here to tell you that that isn't true. If you're a very creative DM who loves homebrewing, who loves making stuff up, and that's your favorite part about being a DM, still grabbing a module and using it as a framework for the story you're going to tell, the world that it takes place in, and the adventure quests that you're going to send your players on is enough to alleviate 75% of the pressure of homebrewing. Within that, you can start homebrewing all you want and expanding or removing parts from the module and making your own steps along the way. I have found it extremely freeing to jump into a module and grab pieces that I love to help me pave the way for my story while not having to write something whole cloth that is completely brand new. Sometimes it can just really help with less pressure.
We even did a video where we went through all the official modules for D&D 5e and talked about how much extra prep or work they require from you as a dungeon master. So if you're considering this as an alternative, check that video out and it can help you select which of the modules are just less work as a dungeon master to run.
There is also a chance that somebody else at your table has an interest in seeing what it might be like to be a DM. If somebody mentions that interest, or if you decide to ask the table, is anybody interested in trying out being a DM? This can be a great time to try to nudge some of your players into trying it. It's not as scary as people make it out to be. It can be a lot of fun. As long as you have a welcoming group that's going to be excited and have fun with the idea of new DMs trying stuff out, maybe passing the mantle for a few weeks could be helpful. While you're at a good interlude in your campaign and you need a few weeks to think about what's next and you're feeling burnt out on trying to come up with ideas quickly, you can say, hey, does anybody else at the table want to run a 1 or 2 shot for a couple weeks? You can even try a few different stories where you go around the table and each person takes a turn being a DM and you get to be a player for a few weeks trying out different ideas and different characters that you've wanted to bring to life for years because you've been a DM the whole time.
Now, a lot of dungeon masters who are self-professed forever DMs may find that this scenario is met with blank stares. And my recommendation is to just say to your group, be honest. Hey, everybody, I'm burnt out. I think that you, player A, B, or C, might make a great dungeon master, and this might be a great opportunity for you to try running a game instead. But if you're not interested or you don't want to, I might just need to take the next couple of weeks off. And of course, you do have to be fair in that if you are going to ask someone else to DM, you might want to still give them like a week or two themselves to get prepared to take that mantle on. So you could even frame it by saying, hey, everybody, we're going to take a month off. But if someone would like, if we'd like to get back a little bit sooner, maybe player A or player B would like to try running a 1 or 2 shot and I could play instead. And just being really honest and open about this gets results. If you feel like you've been the forever DM and none of your players have ever offered, they might still feel like you are the master and they can't take that away from you. And so if you've never asked your players and said, hey, I need a break, this is a great chance for you to cut your teeth, try it and see what happens. And the worst thing that will occur is they say no, they're not interested in trying it right now, and you just take a 4-week break, and that's fine.
Now, this actually ties in great with our next point, because perhaps you do want to pass the mantle, but the other players might be great players in your D&D game, but maybe they aren't prepared to DM. There's a lot of rules in D&D. But perhaps one of your players has another game or system that they want to try out. And that's our next point here. I'm going to use a personal example. At my game table, one of my players actually mentioned to me, hey, I'm running masks for a few of my friends. It's a superhero RPG. And I would love to run a 1 or 2 shot for this table at some point. And I said, yeah, that would be great. If I ever need a break or when this campaign is finished, I've offered this player to run 2 to 3 sessions of masks where we all get to play. there are a ton of excellent systems out there that your players might be excited to try and might be excited to run themselves. Some are much more rules light than others. And if your players are into the RPG world, they might have their hands on a few of these books already.
I've needed to take a break from Dungeons of Drakkenheim in our live stream games many times, and Kelly has jumped in to run Monster of the Week for our group. I haven't played in those games. I took the time off, and sometimes it's actually okay and great as a DM to just step away and let the players play another game that maybe, well, you just relax. But it doesn't even necessarily have to be another RPG that your group tries out. Although I do think playing other RPGs is a great way to improve as role-playing game players and game masters more broadly. You might just decide, you know what? Hey, tonight we're going to play Codenames, or we're going to play Risk. Actually, maybe not Risk. Or we're going to play this board game, or we're going to bust out the Warhammer miniatures, or we're going to break out the Magic cards, and we're just going to have a board game night and relax together as friends so that no one of us is responsible for the evening as the referee and the game master. And that can be a great opportunity to just explore other games, other hobbies, and broaden the friendship that you have with your role-playing game group.
We often also do this if one of our players can't make it. If everybody's available but one player can't make it, I take it as a great time. We don't want that one player to miss part of the story, but we have so many great board games or other games that we can jump into. So we still have a great game night that feels much more relaxing, and I have to do far less work as a dungeon master.
Maybe you can reach a point with your D&D campaign where the arc can come to a brief conclusion, and you can just set it aside for a couple weeks, and maybe you yourself will want to run another RPG. I really suggest, if you have never run a non-D20 based fantasy game, you really should try it sometime. It's amazing how much playing a game that is wildly different from Dungeons & Dragons will improve your perspective on role-playing games and let you appreciate what you like about D&D and give you tools from other games that you can borrow in your role-playing game experiences. For myself, running other games that haven't been D&D, especially really story-based games that are wildly different, has given me an arsenal of things to bring into my D&D game that have really improved it. I think for me, the biggest one was probably the Apocalypse World 2d6 system really altered my perspective. But even playing other games like Call of Cthulhu or Gumshoe, those types of systems really clarify what's important and what the system brings to the table. And it's worth trying those out and can really help you get past the burnout of running D&D.
To echo part of what Monty said, I have ran Monster of the Week on the channel, which is also a 2d6 system. And I can't say enough praises about how much that helped my improv capabilities. Yeah. With a more story-driven system, I realized how easygoing you can be with pushing narrative in interesting directions on the fly, which is something that those game systems taught me, which made me come back to D&D and start preparing less, because I now had the confidence that I could push a story in an interesting direction with less detailed notes on every possible thing that might happen. That was a huge lesson for me, and I learned it by playing other systems. So if you get the chance, try out other systems. It can actually alleviate not only the burnout in that moment because, oh, I need a break from D&D, let's try something new, but the things that you take away from trying other systems actually have helped me alleviate D&D burnout ongoing.
Yeah, and it might seem a little counterintuitive because on paper you're like, but that means I have to learn a whole new system. Aren't I going to be even more exhausted? But it's something about the fact that your brain is now learning something new and is trying something new that actually counterbalances that burnout. So in the moment, it can feel like, oh, I can't put in the effort to learn new rules. But it actually turns out that it works the opposite way. At least it does for me. Yeah, right? Where like your brain is glomming onto something fresh. So it refreshes that mental capacity to learn and appreciate things.
Well, okay, I love burgers and I love pizza. But if I eat burgers every single day, I'm going to get sick of burgers.
Yeah.
If I eat pizza every single day, I'm going to get sick of pizza. If I have a burger one night and a pizza another night, I probably need to watch my health decisions. But also, I'm going to think both are delicious. After enough burgers, pizza's going to taste amazing. And I love RPGs.
Yeah.
So learning a new system might seem daunting, but when it's something new and fresh, it's like eating that burger that you haven't had in a while.
It's like trying something brand new for the first time, like trying a new type of cuisine that you've never eaten before and being like, wait, what is this? This is delicious. Some of these systems might look pretty weird and unappetizing, but once you actually try them, you realize, wow, there's a lot to this. And it can inspire you for when you do come back to Dungeons & Dragons. And ultimately, this leads into our last point, which is, I think, just finding new inspiration is a huge way to reinvigorate your passion for running games. Sometimes this new inspiration has to come alongside a break. Maybe in that month off, you take the opportunity to play some new video games. In particular, play some games outside the genres that that you normally play. If you're like me and you're addicted to games like Civilization and Valheim and all those like open world crafting games, try something that's on the complete different end of the spectrum. Pick up like a roguelike or something like that. Or try reading some more books. If you have the opportunity, travel a little bit, even if it is just going to visit your parents for the weekend. Sometimes these things, this new space, this new mental space, can be reinvigorating.
I find that I get inspiration for new adventures, quests, and entire campaign settings almost every time I read a book, watch a TV show, or watch a movie, or play a video game.
Yeah.
I get inspiration from all of these, and I pick them up, I store them in my head, and I dish them out when necessary. I am rewatching Dragon Prince for the third time right now, and every single time I do, I remind myself that I really need to run a campaign inspired by Dragon Prince.
Yeah.
What a great place. Every time I play a Resident Evil game, I have 1,000 new ideas for adventures that are creepy and horrifying to send my players on. Every time I read a few pages of the Dresden Files, I have new NPCs to bring to life, new ways to describe magic, and new mysteries to bring to my table. I find these are such big inspirations for me, looking at other creative sources and just grabbing everything I can from them and really mixing and mashing them in my head. And the great thing about D&D is a great place to bring your tropes, to bring your cliches, to bring your, oh, isn't this just ripping off that episode of Rick and Morty whole cloth? Yes, it is. And guess what? We're all going to love it.
Yep, we're going to blast. And I think that this is one of these weird kind of advanced prep techniques, because the secret is that by playing other games, by reading other books, by watching movies, TV shows, reading graphic novels, experiencing new things, you are actually doing prep work for D&D. You're having more experiences that you can draw on as a DM. Maybe you even just go to an art gallery or a museum or check out some cool architecture. All of these things can give you ideas that fire your imagination. And when your passion and inspiration are ignited, preparing for your game is super, super easy. And so I do find that rather than spending a ton of time sitting down in front of the computer, reading Wikipedia, doing research, watching YouTube videos, reading the rule books, make sure you moderate that with drawing on inspiration by reading, by playing games, by watching movies, by enjoying other sources of entertainment, because you need that fresh new ideas to kind of circulate the creative juices in a way that doing more research and writing might not. I think that in many cases, we can talk about writers and creative people being only as good as the kind of other creative material that you surround yourself with. That inspiration has to come from somewhere. And if you're keeping yourself inspired, that's going to be a formula against burnout. These strategies that we're talking about are ways that dungeon masters can confront burnout that might be coming from the sources of Dungeons & Dragons and the gameplay experience itself. But of course, you might be feeling burnt out from other conditions in your life. Maybe work is really busy, maybe things are stressing you about the world, or maybe you just need to take some time to work on your own health, be that physical or mental. These strategies should not be taken as a replacement for your own health-based strategies. And so if you do need to take time to look at your own physical or mental health, don't forget that in the midst of all these tips that we're going to give today.
Mental health is extremely important, and DM burnout might be the symptom of several other things that are going on. And in this day and age, it's extremely important to take care of your mental health. Listen to your body, listen to your mind, and figure out what you need to do to protect yourself and make sure that this game continues to be fun for you and your friends. Whatever you got to do to get there, do it and take care of yourself. This has been a look at dealing with DM burnout in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. If you have any great tips, we would love for the comments section on this video to be a great discussion on ways that DMs can help each other learn to handle DM burnout. So what are your best tips for dealing with the burnout and protecting your mental health in the games of Dungeons & Dragons? Let us know.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible with the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the work that we do here on YouTube, please consider becoming a patron of our show by following the links in the description below.
And don't forget to check out our live play in the Worlds of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday evenings on Twitch. You can find all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we have plenty more great advice for Dungeon Masters that can ease the amount of work that you have to do in game prep right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time
in the dungeon.